Ain't like I'm still 5 years old, you know? Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him?
It's all right to be angry.
How come he don't want me, man?
All us kids with no dads are gonna take over the world.
Hence why the name is Milk Run, you know. Our fathers went to get milk, never came back.
We can restore the balance.
Hashtag no dad gang.
We always end up coming back with milk. Unlike your dad, we'll be here next week. The Milk Run Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Milk Run crossover with the Girl Next Door podcast. We are joined by Renee, the host of the Girl Next Door podcast.
Yeah,
How you doing?
I am really good. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're good. We're feeling
great.
pumped after the first episode.
I'm energized, I'm coffeeed up.
Yeah, it's amazing. Your story is amazing.
I feel like I went kind of all over the place. You know, when someone says, "Tell me your life story," like,
Because you got to compress it into this little...
Yeah, totally.
sure.
And then it's
Totally.
like every time anyone ever asks me to share my testimony, they only ever get a part because
Yes.
it's so hard to
so long.
condense it. But
So long.
we talked about this last episode, but it's amazing to see how you and God have built your life into what it is today. And just testimony that doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or what's happened to you.
Yeah.
You're in control of your destiny. And now you have a beautiful family, beautiful dog too.
I love my dog.
I'm a big dog person as well.
Should
so,
let her in at the end.
I do love your dog.
Bosco, well, this guy, every episode, he G's up Bosco in the middle of the episode.
I love Bosco so much.
He does. He wants to steal my dog.
I just want him, and I just want
Is
He does
Well,
like Bosco.
my dog Billy
to... Hates me.
only used to bark at you.
Yeah.
We're like, is she racist?
I think.
But loves Gabe. Gabe is
But then
Hispanic.
She didn't bark at you today.
No, I think
She loves you now.
maybe trying to...
Well, mind you, Bosco took a little bit to warm up to you too.
True.
I
You
think
were
you just have that vibe.
I don't have that vibe to dogs. I want to be like that. Oh, is it because...
No, it's got nothing to do with that.
No,
Well,
you
but it's
joked
got
around
more
about
so
it.
to do with, some people say, dogs are a great judge of character.
Yeah.
Right, and
What does that say about Ephrat?
that's what I'm
Damn
putting
it,
out there
man.
into the world.
No.
I think there's something you need to work on.
You got some underlying issues.
Should I talk
Ephrat.
to the dogs? Or...
Yeah.
Let's ask them
Is,
what
is,
they're
that a,
therapy
is that a thing,
man.
dog therapy? Is that a thing?
Yes.
There's some weird
Yes.
stuff out there
My
for
dog
dogs.
is like, what do you call it? Built.
Bred.
To be a therapy dog. Not because she can talk.
Billy, am I... What's wrong with me?
Have you seen those dogs that can press they make the buttons
Yes.
and
What
they
about
learn
Bunny?
how to talk?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I wanted to do that with my dog. I just didn't
I
have
can't...
time.
Is that real?
It's
Is that-
real.
Is that real?
Legit, look up What About Bunny on
I just don't
Instagram.
understand how they can comprehend what that word is saying, or do they comprehend the picture to the word?
No. So, like, for instance, if you teach a dog how to sit, they can't understand English. All they hear
Yeah.
is "moo," but they attribute "moo" to them putting their butt on the floor.
yeah,
You know
you
what I'm
say
saying?
sit.
The sound
Well,
of...
yeah, but
Yeah.
in their brain, I'm just trying to put myself
But
in the
then,
dog's
but then
brain.
you teach them what, like, so there are all these words on the floor, and so they learn one at a time. So they know that one is sit. Like they learn
They got the same capacity as a 2-year-old, right? Or 3-year-old?
the something like that. I think
Yeah.
so.
Maybe a bit more, because I've seen
5-year-old.
some of these dogs in the way that
Straight
they
up talking.
But then again, I've
Amazing.
seen children who can sign language before they can talk.
I taught my kids sign language when they were little.
Oh, before they could talk.
Yeah, before they could talk. So things like thank you, more, and please. I'm not doing it. I can't remember. I think it was
Yeah,
a
wow.
more. Was this more? Thank you. And then I can't remember please. But my kids would do that before they
What?
could talk. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Do they do that
I
now?
train them
That's
with
why they're so
manners.
respectful
That's
now.
why Liam does this to me all the time. I'm like, what are you
There's
doing,
a-
bro? Just goes... Oh,
Well,
oh.
it's so good to have you here and for us to be here, actually, because we came up your way for this
You
one.
did. I offered to come down your way,
We would never.
but you came here.
No, because Bosco's a menace.
I love dogs. I'd be
And
I'm
I
just
didn't
like
want
that.
him to interrupt in the episode
I would've
again
G'd him up as
because Ephrat does make me very angry. No, he doesn't. But today, so last episode we talked about your story,
Yes.
which was pretty wild to be able to hear some of those things. But today I would love to be able to talk about the whole idea of fatherlessness and how you've seen it affect this world and the children of this world. But it's funny, right? You've got currently living in the world right now. You have, the elderly generation, the grandparents, who are living out their, brokenness through what's happened, and they're living it out in a different way to then parents, and then they're living it out in a different way to
for sure.
then my generation, and then my generation is living it differently to Ephrat, and then so on and so forth. So it's different across the board. But I would love to hear your thoughts and your ideas on the family unit, on fatherlessness and how it affects the world. So maybe we could get started by talking about the blueprint. You were talking about that before. Maybe we start there.
Yeah, look, I think the number one problem in the world stems back to the breakdown of the nuclear family. So if you look back at Genesis, God set the blueprint right there, first of all, for, he created male, he created female. And then there's the scripture that talks about a mother shall leave her, a wife and husband leaves their mother and father, and they join together to become one, and then they have children. So God was setting up in Genesis that blueprint for your roles and your gender, and the blueprint for the nuclear family. Now, of course, that's not very popular to say that, but this is what I always say to people. Think about the fruit of something, right? So you don't have to agree with me, but talk to anybody who comes from a broken home or anybody who's adopted, and they will all tell you that something was missing from their life.
For sure.
You know, so you go, okay, you don't have to agree with my biblical worldview, but how about you tell me what your view is, and let's look at the result of that. And fatherlessness is a classic example of the effect that it's having on a generation. And I think the more the nuclear family breaks down, the more society breaks down. You just look in the jails. The majority of men in jails are fatherless.
Yeah, well,
You know, so
Wow.
that is true. Yeah.
It's not too late for you, Ephrat. You might end up in prison.
I know. I'm counting on it.
well, even all of those stats, like statistically, people from broken homes, young people from broken homes, have a higher rates of addiction, high rates of school dropout. The girls have high rates of getting pregnant earlier, high rates of their own marriages not lasting, and there's one other. Might be mental health. I've actually got it written down. I'm going to tell you about a book in a minute, but there was one other, higher rates of something. Oh, of learning issues as well.
Yeah, we talked about that once.
Well, in my industry, we see that all the time. Like, I reckon, again, I think then 60 to 70% of the kids don't have parents or just have one parent.
Right, that is a classic example of what I mean, and look at the fruit. You're in an industry where you are working with children for that reason, who don't have a family for whatever reason, and look at the result of their behaviour. They behave the way they do because of all of the rejection and all of the neglect and all of the stuff that they're going through. I bet you don't have anyone in your care who's come from a family unit that's really strong.
No. Well, we had one, but the only reason why is because it was him. Not him, but it was his disability that the parents just couldn't really look after.
Right. So that was
that
was a different reason.
It's not like because
yeah.
But yeah. But
it's interesting.
it is interesting.
And I always say, I think that all the issues in society stem from broken homes.
Yeah.
And it started with the first broken home, or the first breakdown, which was in the garden.
Yeah.
And it's been
true.
been the enemy's mandate and job ever since then to continue to break down the family. Initially, to try and stop Jesus from even being born in the first place, from messing with bloodlines to causing people to stumble, all sorts of things. If the family is strong, if the family is following the God blueprint, then society is strong, like you're saying. And so that's amazing. But you've got a book there. What have you got there?
What is this
book?
book?
My gosh, this is so good. I would recommend this. It's not like a Christian book or anything. Doop, doop, doop.
The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce.
25 years later.
Judith Wallerstein. Okay, so this lady is a psychologist in America. She's the only person in the world to have done a longitudinal study. Do you know what that is, guys?
Something to do with length.
It is literally.
Longitude.
It's the longest study ever done in the world of children from divorced homes. So she's got 4 books.
I think I've heard of this before.
Yeah, I might have told you about it. She has grabbed a group of children whose parents divorced back when my parents divorced, and she followed them for the next 4 decades to look at their outcomes. The reason she went into it was because her children's friends were coming from divorced homes, and as a psychologist, she wanted to prove that children are resilient and that divorce didn't affect them. So she started this study, and she has ended up becoming the biggest advocate against divorce because she came to the conclusion divorce always has a long-term effect on children.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, this book, that she's got 4 of them, but I'd say this is the latest one, and I would say the best. New York Times bestseller. It is like opening it up and reading your story, reading inside your own head. You go, this makes so.
And she's never experienced, like, other
She-
than the study.
No, she studied
She's
a
never
bunch of
experienced
people like you and me
That's
for 4
amazing, eh?
decades. The same
Imagine
people.
that.
She followed them through.
That's amazing. I feel really heard right now.
Well, I mean, like, if
Yeah.
you look in there, I don't know if you can see it, but I've just got like underline,
Yeah,
underline,
and,
underline.
of
I didn't have
everything.
my highlighter, so you probably can't see it. But I just
but
was
yeah.
like, that's why I messed up.
wow.
Well, wouldn't
I
it
can
be
s-
interesting to be able to follow the opposite side for 40 years as well and see what some of the contrasts are between following a family or young people who were in a healthy family for 40 years? As it, maybe we should start one. Start now. How old will we be at the end of 40 years?
I'll be 60.
I'll be in a nursing home.
We'll come visit.
I mean-
We'll drop off the study.
We got you.
come visit.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
All right, the
you'd be a
conclusions, it's
grandparent.
true. And the other thing too that's interesting though is she also compares it to families who stay together, but there's a lot of fighting.
Ooh.
And there's very similar outcomes too. So it's still not ideal even for a family to stay intact,
For sure.
but to be very dysfunctional. And the thing is, I don't want anyone to feel judged, right, by our conversation
totally.
today. And that's why I think people tend to maybe get a little bit defensive if you say the nuclear family is the way to go, because you can see society just can't seem to get themselves together. But just because we feel something or just because something's normal doesn't make it the truth.
Totally.
So
I would 100% agree with that, and you probably say it much nicer than I do. My way of saying it, as I've said before, is like you have the ability right now to determine what your tomorrow is.
you do.
And so if you
do.
hear anything that we say and you feel hurt or you feel, oh yeah, well, it's all good and well for you to say, you don't know what I'm going through. No, you're right. I don't know what you're going through, but I do know the potential of what you could walk into. And it all starts with responsibility. So whatever stage you're at, you have the ability to wake up today, wake up tomorrow, and decide to walk towards a better future. So what are some things you wanted to go through in this book? What are some ways that fatherlessness or divorced homes kind of affect us and then in turn affect society?
Yeah.
Well, got my notes. Let me quote from her.
Yep.
A divorce in childhood creates an enduring identity.
Say that again.
wait.
Say that one more
Everyone's-
time.
So a divorce in childhood
Yep.
creates an enduring identity.
And what is that identity?
Well, I think what she's trying to say is it affects your identity. So she went into it going, children are resilient. They can get through divorce. It's a one-off event. If parents get divorced, you move on, right?
I see.
Whereas she's saying, no, it literally impacts and changes your identity for the rest of your life. Now, it doesn't have to mean for the bad. There are good sides to it too. But if you think about it, a little girl is very affected by her relationship with her father in the first, particularly 8 years of her life. Now, if that father's gone like mine, that has impacted the blueprint of who I was as a child when I'm developing my sense of identity.
Yep.
And that's why we end up then down the track having dysfunction, because the blueprint, and obviously it might be different if your parents divorce a bit later, but it still has an effect on you, but it changes your identity.
Isn't that interesting when you say that it's, fatherless homes or breakdown of the family unit early on affect your identity and cause you to have issues with your identity all the way through. But isn't it funny that when we came to God, our identity was the number one thing that was changed and was fixed?
Yes.
Have you
That's crazy.
Yes.
you've been in church, you've been in youth for a while now. Well, you've not been in youth, but you've seen youth. What have you seen with that? The change of identity, and I feel like your youth was different to my youth, was different to your youth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The different seasons and different generations of how this impacts.
Yeah.
Will you share?
100%. Well, you got to remember, divorce only really started, right, in 1976. Now, that might for you guys is like, oh, that's so long away. I was born around that time. So a thing came in called the no fault divorce law, right, which means that a person could get divorced without proving fault. And so that became very easy to get divorces. This happened in California, and then it rolled on in Australia in 1976. So my parents were in that 1976 bunch of all of a sudden an explosion of divorce. So if you look and you track then the last, 5 decades since 1976, I can see an incredible moral decline happening in society at the same time that there's been a decline in the family unit. Now, it doesn't mean that the 60s were perfect and the 50s were perfect, but there was some sense of stability that doesn't exist now. And I would say with every passing generation, mental health is an example. Mental health has declined in an incredible rate at the same time that the value of families has declined. So I absolutely, and working with young people over several generations, it's getting worse. Because not only that, you go back to identity, right? Not only is our identity no longer stable, and you're right, that's where God comes into it, but now they're attacking the identity on a whole new level when it comes to gender ideology. Wow. So and mental health attacks our identity. So there's a crazy decline happening over the generations.
Well, even with race-based things in different organizations that are pushing these same-sex attraction, all of these key things that are affecting our world have everything to do with identity.
Yep.
Do you think that relates? Is that what you'd call a victim mentality? Like, does that make sense?
I think it depends if we choose to buy into it.
Yeah.
I think a victim mentality is something we choose to adopt.
Yep.
And I think a lot of young people, I was talking to the academy students the other day. You've done academy with me. And they're all leaders. And they said to me, they're like, Renee, what do we do with these young people who are all struggling with some sort of mental health issue or, whatever it is, but they sit in it and they pick it up as an identity, and they seem to have it's almost like you're not allowed to tell them you can be strong and you can get through this. It's like when I've done it on my podcast, and I'm like, guys, we don't have to accept these things. We don't have to live in these things. People get really angry with you because they want to make you sit in this identity and just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and hold it up as a almost like a badge of, I don't know. It's like you get attention if you have something wrong with you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Totally. And it's used as a mask or as an excuse to not take responsibility. And I think that's kind of like, it's like a lack of responsibility in this generation, myself included, because it's uncomfortable to be told that you actually had the power to be able to make a change and make a difference.
But it should be the most freeing thing.
It should be. Like, even I was just catching up with Cam the other day, and I was talking to him about some work stuff that is going on. And he said to me, which is 100% accurate, you have the power to make a change in that space. You don't have to put up with it. If you want to go after it, you go after it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I 100% agree, but it's still uncomfortable to take responsibility.
Yes.
When it's so much easier to put the responsibility on a title, on the responsibility, I have this mental illness, or it's this person's fault because they're this and they've done this to me. It's like, well, it's uncomfortable to take the responsibility.
And that's a massive change I've seen in the generations. In my generation, it'd be like, I've got this thing that's happened to me. Now, how can I recover from that? Whereas now it's like you get given a label and that's it.
That's your label.
And then maybe some medication, which I'm not against medication, but I'm saying like literally, and no solution. In fact, if I tell you that maybe you can get through this, I'm being harmful to you.
Yeah.
Which is
What a
I'm
weird
just-
place
yeah.
to have to navigate, right?
Crazy.
right. So my parents divorced, yes, and guess what? I'm now an adult with my own kids and my own marriage, and I can't keep blaming my mum and dad for what happens in my marriage. And that's not a tough thing, that's a good thing, because it means I've got the power to do something about it. And then I've got Christ as well.
Yeah.
So it's not even my own natural power, it's his power
Yeah.
in me.
Totally.
That is so good.
Totally, 100%. I'm so grateful that I found God when I did.
Yeah.
You know, as a early 20-year-old. I mean, I heard about God growing up. I really gave my life to him in my early 20s, and just the journey of taking responsibility. If I could summarize my whole relationship with God, it was him showing me how to take responsibility for my life.
Yes.
Because I come from a family that has suffered a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
Generational hurt over the
Yeah.
years. You know, the stories my nana tells me about her life, I mean, it was tragic. My mum and her family again, and then with me and my brothers, every single one of us has a different story, each as tragic as the last. Some brothers, my oldest brother didn't even know his dad. My two older brothers, their dad died in a plane crash. My dad left and struggled with alcoholism, and then my younger brother Matt, his dad was a drug addict who passed away from a drug overdose. And I mean, you have all these different things going on. I'm now happily married. I'm now in a great place in a faith community, living out my dreams, if I can say that.
Yeah.
On multiple fronts, working in video work, working in church, doing all these things, married to my best friend. I'm one of the only ones in my family who's doing that. And the only way I can describe it or pin it down to is that God taught me. He didn't just tell me, he taught me how to take responsibility.
Yeah. It's that identity in Christ, right?
And
so
Statistically, you two should both be a train wreck.
yeah.
I have been at certain stages of my life, believe me.
For sure, yeah. Oh, not. Yeah. I'm agreeing with Renee, not that, but yeah.
Yeah, no,
But
no,
right?
totally.
Like
Yeah.
you should both, and Efrat, you're still really young, and you think you've got like no relationship with your dad.
Yeah, well, I think what Jake was saying, at the end of the day, it is God, but a lot of the things, I feel, because we are in this religion, there's a lot of people that are above us and a lot of, ahead of us. That's the word, not above. What the heck? Yeah, ahead of us. Yeah,
I know what you're trying to
yeah,
say.
ahead of us. And so, I'm like a sponge, so I
Yeah.
soak in. That's why I think in high school I struggled a lot with even Christianity, because the things that I was soaking in wasn't God. It was my friends. Whereas now, I'm soaking in really, 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 really great leaders. For those of you who don't know what leaders are, they're like, what a leader is, but someone that we look up to. So, for example, Isaiah, I straight up look up to him like crazy. And so I'm just soaking in Renee and Cam. Sometimes Jay. Yeah.
Yes.
But without you, honestly, without you guys, I feel be this awake.
Yeah, but
Is that the wording?
yeah, aware, but
yeah.
you've just said a huge key, which is you're a sponge soaking it all in, right? But that's a choice that you're making. So
yes.
you've put good people around you, and you're like, what you've done is actually really powerful. The Bible talks about to have a vision and to make it plain and to write it down. You've actually put a vision before you of what you want to be. You're putting the people before you that you're like, I want my life to be like that, not like this. And so you've actually put like almost like a vision board made of like legitimate real people going, that's what I want my marriage to be like. That's what the kind of person that I want to be. And that's you taking responsibility.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we're all in that sense, right? Where we've taken accountability, and we're and now we're kind of shooting for the stars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
man,
Well, it's been crazy.
it's
journey,
been crazy journey.
But there's a lot of in that journey along the way. I know for me, and that's why reading this book was really powerful, because there was stuff that I realized we had a shared experience, no matter. And I know we're very different here. Like I grew up from divorced home. You've never known your dad. You've
known him along the way,
but your parents were never married.
Yeah.
And so we all come from a different place, but there's shared commonality.
For sure.
You know, we talked about rejection in the last one. And even though our parents never meant to reject us, you know, I would often say to my mum, how do I know that my dad loves me? And she'd be like, of course your dad loves you. But then in my little brain, I'm like, he loves me, but he left.
He's not here right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there is rejection regardless of how much they might love you. And that plays out in different ways in all of us. And statistically, according to, you know, this world's only longitudinal study, it really does affect particularly our relationships that we have down the track.
In what ways would you say? What are kind of the biggest ways? Yeah.
So one of the biggest ways she talks about in here is that we have a real fear that the same thing's going to happen to us.
Wow.
A lot of
So true.
a lot of fear. So, and that can make us unreasonable at times. Like I remember when Cameron and I were first married, and he went to play basketball, and he said to me, "Hey babe, I'll be back tonight about 10:30." 11 o'clock comes. 11:30 comes.
Worst thought, right?
Oh yeah,
He was
I'm
out
like,
drinking, wasn't he?
Yeah.
yeah. I just was like, oh no, he was out having an affair in my mind.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, I was ready to divorce
thought.
him by the time it was midnight.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
No,
And he
totally.
comes home to this raving lunatic wife going, "You told me you'd be back at 10:30. It's 12 o'clock, right?"
It's so funny. I have had that exact same thing, but me to Sarah.
Right.
Like almost identical in the early days.
This book, man.
Specifically when we were dating. Like, so
Yes.
for me, the way that it played out was that if me and Sarah, we'd go out on a date. If she didn't, and I don't know how to explain it per se, but if she didn't like show me any attention or whatever, like, you know, as we're driving, put her hand on my leg, that to me was like, oh my God, she is going to leave me.
She's gone.
That
Goodness
took
me.
a work, but that was like early
Yes.
days for me. That's how it played out, it was unreasonable as all heck, 100%.
Yeah.
Now
Now thinking of it, but at the moment you're
At the
like,
moment, I was like, it was like alarm
yeah.
bells, alarm bells.
I know
alarm
what
bells.
you mean. Oh damn, this
Were
is
you
crazy.
aware? And do you know what? And this is the thing. If you're not aware that that's where it's coming from, that can break relationships apart.
For sure.
Because then she's going to think you're some weird, needy person.
She did think that,
Right.
but thank God she had the parts to
The foresight to understand
Understand it,
why.
and say, where's this coming from?
Yes. And Cameron
Yeah, wow.
did too.
And we talked about it, and it got to a point where she was like, you know, that's something you got to work through. Oh, well, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I tried to argue at the time because it was new to me, and because I was feeling it so strongly, I was like, well, I don't know if this is something I can change,
Yeah.
you know. But then obviously it was, because it was unhealthy, and it was something that I actually journeyed through and walked through. And then to the point where it was such a dramatic change, where one day, you know, Sarah, we didn't hold hands for the whole date or whatever. She goes, why aren't you freaking out?
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost like something had
It's like
switched
that
in
flick,
me,
right?
where it was like,
Yeah.
I know you love me. I know you're different to
What the heck?
to
Being
anyone
aware
else.
of the pattern is really.
This is so crazy because, like, again, it's so crazy how one little instance, and none of our families, we don't even know each other back. You know what I mean? We weren't even born in the same generation, but we all have it's identical. I wouldn't even say similarity because that is exactly what I experienced as well, and that's what Renee experienced. Similar things, right?
Yeah.
So this book, I need to read it.
That's what I mean about shared experiences. So you can be in a whole different generation with a different kind of story,
Yeah.
but it still has the same impact.
So then, I guess the question that stems out of, you know, a conversation like this is, what are the steps to, I guess, healing the family unit or healing the world, in that regard? Because, you know, I wonder how many relationships out there have failed because of undealt with and unresolved feelings towards or about fatherlessness that you know, people aren't dealing with, or it's a big question, right? Because I mean, how long is a piece of string?
Totally.
But how can we start to work towards, like, what are some steps we can take to be able to work towards a world where God-honoring families are the norm?
Well, the first and foremost key is to start with yourself and to take responsibility for yourself, which is exactly what Scripture tells us to do. And I think if we can take responsibility for ourselves first and start healing with God's help, then we've got more chance of then going the next step, which is then starting to heal and create stronger family units. Like, I feel like I've done my bit for the world.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've had 3 kids. I've got a really great marriage, great family. But now I say to my kids, don't you stuff it up now, guys. I worked hard. I worked hard. Now it's your turn for you to make, you know. So I think working on yourself. I think the other thing that's really does concern me is that society doesn't think that fatherlessness is the problem or that broken families is the problem.
It's like,
Right?
Well, and the other things that we talk about are the,
Well,
Right?
it's interesting to me because I think, of course, the world doesn't think fatherlessness is the issue, because at the end of the day, well, we would know the real issue is fatherlessness, and it's people not being connected to their heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you know, that replicates in the physical realm is that fatherlessness. No one wants to admit that, because if you admit that the family is broken, then you have to admit that family was originally designed a certain way.
That's
and then
right.
you have to admit that there was a designer of the family, and then you have to admit that there is a
Yep.
Father in heaven.
Yeah.
And so it progresses along this sort
Yeah.
of course. But on the whole idea of taking responsibility, the story you told when Cam went and played basketball, did you take responsibility in that scenario, or how did that play out?
Yeah, I feel like it's different when the person from the broken home is the wife as opposed to being the husband. I think there's a conversation to be had there. I feel a little bit more for you guys who, and maybe people think it's old fashioned, but you guys are leading the relationship, you know, like the man of the house.
Sarah would agree
Right?
with that.
Yeah. And so I think it's different. But for me, I was so blessed that Cameron was aware.
Yep.
So we had really good marriage counselling going into it. And I think what happens is when you're trying to heal from something, it comes in different layers. So when I was single, I did a lot of the work, and I feel like I had healed as much as I could. But then new stuff comes up when you get married, and then it comes up again when you have kids. And I'm like, I can't parent my kids out of this. I've got to heal on another whole layer. So Cameron was aware. And so he was so good. Instead of him just going off his nut at me, he's like, babe. And he pulled me aside. And I want to run away in those instances and not talk about it. And he would force me to be like, come and sit here. We're not going to bed until we talk about this. And he just reassured me. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. So that was really healing for me. But then I've always been someone that's taken personal responsibility. So for me, it was easy to go, this is why I'm feeling the way that I am, because I've brought this into my marriage. And so, I did have to then go, while he was very understanding, I also can't for the rest of my life make him have to act a certain way so that I don't feel like he's going to abandon me. So it's
Totally.
both. It was like both coming towards one another.
Yep.
in that.
100%. And I often find that's the way it is that it's a balance.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other. It's not just on you. It's not just on Cam. It's
Totally.
it's 100% on each of you, but together.
Yeah.
Um,
And it gets easier. Like the longer you're married, you get to understand yourself a bit more. You know, he understood me. And so it was easier to more quickly identify, this is just my abandonment issues, my rejection issues. And you get to recognize it, and then you can deal with it quicker.
I think I often wonder, you know, thinking back to the Garden of Eden, what the world would have been like if that original breakdown didn't happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, what the family unit would look like today. And you know, the hope that one day we can, as humanity, restore the earth to what God originally designed. You know, obviously, as Christians, we believe that one day Jesus is going to come back. He'll establish a new heaven and a new earth and all that sort of thing. But I try not to see it as a nihilistic sort of view that, well, we don't have to try and fight for these things because the world's going to end anyway. I believe that there is every chance that if we fight hard enough, we can establish a little bit of heaven on earth. And why couldn't we restore the family unit? Why couldn't we, as humanity, bring back God into the home and make, you know, the Bible says Jesus is coming back for an unblemished bride. Why can we not hope for a better day? You know what I mean? And so I guess you were saying it before, you know, one of the ways in which we can start to restore the family unit, because I do believe that if we restore the family unit, the world would be a different place.
It would.
People wouldn't be searching for their identity out in the world because it would be established in the home.
That's right.
And so many things would be established in the home. So how can we start working towards that? Well, I think you've said it pretty clearly. It's taking responsibility for you where you're at now and making a conscious decision to fix where you're at. Don't worry about what's happening in other people's world. Don't happen, you know, just look within and sort that out. Sort that out. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think once you've done that and you've taken personal responsibility, you've got a better chance of coming into a relationship like not as two halves, not as a broken person, but as a person that, I mean, not that you're perfect, but has dealt with and healed as much as you can. And then I think when you do choose someone in life, and you do have to take a risk. I remember saying to my mentor, like, how do I know that Cameron's not going to go and do something stupid and have an affair on me? And I was waiting for her to go, he would never do that. Don't worry, you're going to have the perfect marriage. And I was shocked when she said to me, yeah, he might do that. And I was like, don't tell me that. You're meant to tell me that. And then and this is what she said, I'll never forget it. She goes, but you know what? No matter what, there's always forgiveness and there's always God. And I'm like, okay. So I was trying to grasp for this sense of perfection that nothing bad would ever happen to me again, right? That doesn't exist because you've got two humans coming together. But what you do and what you can do is you be completely committed. Like when I walked down that aisle and I said I do, I took it very seriously that I'm making a promise before Cameron and before God, and that, you know, he is the third chord that makes us not easily broken. And then we just did a couple of simple things like Cameron and I, we had said right from the get-go, divorce is not an option. We call it the D word. The D word is not even, like, we don't even bring it up in an argument. Like, we've just made this commitment and like this rule. You got to have some rules that make your marriage stable. We have a rule that it's not an option ever, it's just not an option that we would divorce.
Yeah, wow.
Take it off the table and never use it to punish you. Well, you just go find someone else. You know, no, it's just not an option.
Say it over your life.
This is for life. And so let's work that out.
I like that.
Yeah. You know, if something's broken,
I'm writing notes right now. You know, like this is incredible. Yeah.
And you know, an easy way to do that. And it actually says a non-Christian person this woman said this in the book. If you just do not go to bed angry, but that's a scripture.
That's right. Do not let the sun go down on your anger.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say don't be angry. You're going to get ticked with each other. Cameron and I are hotheads.
That's so funny.
I have been in the room at different meetings. Ephrat, she's not lying.
Oh man.
Yeah, but
Poor staff.
But it's good to see. It's good to see people fight in a healthy way.
We're not full out fighting.
No, I say fight in a way.
No, we work together. Yes. We work together, guys, and so that can make some very interesting. But it's good to see
it happen.
Yeah, we do. We disagree. Yeah.
But then by the end of that same meeting, it's like nothing ever happened.
Oh, no, totally. Cameron and I always said when we first got married, we would never criticize each other in public. And it happened a couple of times when we were first married. And then behind closed doors, we're like, never. Like, I felt like you criticized me in front of everyone. Never do that again. Whereas that's just us having, like, a disagreement in front of the staff. Like, no, we're going to do it this way. No, we're going to do it that way. And then they all sit there like this.
Our bosses are mad. What do we do? Yeah.
But in a way, it can be almost like a healing thing because you go, oh, they can disagree. And
it's been one of the best things for me and Sarah because I think especially during COVID, we started to get scared of fighting because we didn't want to we didn't want to hurt each other's feelings, but then we were scared of where the fights could go.
Yep.
But then it has been really healing for us to be able to see, not that you guys fight, like you said, but you guys do have
A conflict.
robust discussion.
Yeah.
And like we'll blatantly disagree on a topic. And it's just like, well, no, this is what I think. And it's like, well, no, this is what I think. And then and it's been really healing to be able to see that. And even since then, Sarah and I have started to really hash things out, you know, even when it comes to kids and when it comes to the way that we live and what we want to do with our lives and what we believe and what we stand on. It's like it has been healing. And it has been a agreement, and it's been an agreement of ours as well to never let the sun go down on our anger.
Yeah.
And so when we first got married, it was I was probably I overshare more than I undershare, and Sarah was probably the one who didn't like talking about things, and so we had to meet in the middle. But early on, we would shy away from it. Now we make sure that we
Get everything out.
we get everything out and we sort it out before we go to bed. And then it's like it's so much better.
That's actually a big safety net for people from a broken home as well, because it's actually another thing in the book I had written down was that we always think a little conflict means, oh, that's it, we're done, we're getting divorced.
So
Like
it's
any
this nihilistic view of the world that every little thing is not going to be all right.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's because that's what we've seen.
Yeah.
That's because as kids we've seen that a conflict did result in dad walking out the door or dad never being in the door or
It's just a
whatever.
flight response, honestly, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we then don't feel safe when when there's a conflict. I remember as a kid being petrified going into like a friend's house where I remember always being afraid when the dad would come home. And if the dad was like gruff or anything like that, I'd be like, die. I just wanted to go. I was scared.
I still can't deal with when and not like in a really bad way, but like it still makes my heart go fast, like fast beating when my mum yells.
Right.
And when people are fighting around the house. So when I go and visit, if her and Waz are having a disagreement or whatever, mum never gets up off the couch she does get up off the couch, but I mean they're on different sides of the house having a conversation. So they're like yelling across the house, not really angry at each other or whatever. But even that still gets the heart going, because I remember when I was a kid, I hated being in environments like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're all the little effects.
That's good. I relate to what you said, Renee. Like, even when I first came here, I don't even remember when. I think I was hanging out with Liam, and then I saw Cam there, and intimidated straight away.
To have,
Crazy, right?
Yep.
Or Maddie's not even dad, but more uncles and all that. Straight intimidation. And I just like I'd always make the effort to conversate with them, but I'm out here just crying internally, like, this is so scary. I don't know why.
Funny.
I'm afraid, right?
Well,
like,
but on the opposite end of that spectrum, I had no respect for men.
yeah, wow.
So I wasn't scared of them. I thought they were all losers.
Right, so you went the other way. We're polite.
Yeah.
Jake's like, right, but it's still for the same reason.
Yeah, but the opposite side of the coin. So I was like, I couldn't care less. Like,
Yeah, wow.
and that was something I had to work through again, because that's a totally unhealthy way to
And
see
it's
the world.
self-protection
Yes,
yeah, wow.
correct.
as well.
And so, it's just funny how it all plays out.
It is two sides of the same coin, right? Like, but yeah, like what you're saying, we are not saying you're not polite.
No, but you're right.
Yeah.
We still had an issue with men coming into it, like just being present.
I think that has something to do as well with, that I was brought up with all boys in the house.
Yes.
And so we were always fighting.
Yes.
Like, whether it was physical or emotional, it was like, it was kill or be killed type of thing. And so I think I still carry some of that, and I do have to be careful, because my first point of call can be to go straight for the throat.
Yeah.
And so my brothers have called me out on it, like that I go for the throat, but mentally.
Wow.
So the things I say
can be
really mean.
punishing.
I've never seen you in that state
That's because I've worked through
just yet.
Yeah.
and it's just like, it's those defense mechanisms. I was always smaller too.
For sure.
So I learned to fight back with my words. So, teachers at school, when male teachers would try to tell me what to do, I'd flip and
mouth off at them.
But in a way that made them look so stupid. And I regret it. How rude of me and how stupid of me to treat people like that.
Yeah.
But that was a
just a
defense mechanism.
Yeah, wow. Like the fight or flight thing, right? That's crazy.
Did you have any worries in getting married, and then when you guys kind of started trying for kids? I don't know what your story is like there, but were you nervous of starting a family considering the way that you were brought up and the experience that you had? Or by that point, had you kind of worked through it all?
No, I probably a bit of both. I was super excited to have kids. I always wanted kids. But when I was little, I mean, like my hobby was to have dolls and take them around in prams. So I felt like I was born to have kids in that respect. Yeah, I was afraid to be a mum in the sense of not looking after my kids. I knew I'd do a good job, but I was afraid that I would have a volatile relationship with my kids because that's all I've ever known. Like I do have a bit of a strained kind of relationship with my parents, both of them in different ways. Not really through any fault of my own. Like I'm not a difficult person to get along with, but there's been a lot of me having to parent one of my parents, and there's been a lot of manipulation. And so I've been manipulated a lot. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to, particularly with, say, Georgia, how am I going to have a relationship with my daughter without being manipulative? So I was afraid to be a good mum. So that I was afraid of. But on the flip side, and it actually says it in our handy little book here, that often people that come from divorce homes, girls that come from divorce homes, are find it very healing to watch their husbands being fathers.
Yeah, wow.
And that was true for me.
Okay.
I reckon for 10 years at least, I was so fascinated watching Cameron father hit the kids in the best way. I was like, I'm getting to watch what I missed out on. It was amazing to me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I would always say to the kids, do you know how blessed you are? You've got like the best dad in the whole world. And so for me, Father's Day and stuff was as much me being thankful for him as the kids. Really sweet, so that was very healing. Yeah.
How about you, Jakey?
What about me?
With
how do you feel about having kids?
I'm very excited, scared as anything. Sarah and I have conversations about having kids and kind of timeline of when we're thinking, and there's been times where we thought Sarah was pregnant, and where I thought maybe I would be terrified. I have never been more excited in my life, and it hasn't. Like we haven't tried for kids or anything. So it's a difficult one because on the one hand, I am so excited to become a dad. Like it's like, I feel like becoming a dad is what I was born to do.
I think you'd be a great dad.
But then on the other hand, I'm like, I have no idea.
Yes.
Because I have only from what I've seen, other than what I've seen, I've not experienced. And I learned through experience. Yeah, wow. You know what I mean? Obviously, being in a church world, I have the experience of having spiritual fathers.
Yeah.
And I have seen families do it well. But even then, it's like, I don't really know. So
you never had that, like, one...
So it is scary to me, but also very exciting. Wow. And I know that I've got great people around me. You know, I feel confident. You know, Mum was saying not too long ago, you know, when you and Sarah have kids, you're going to have to move back up to Townsville, you know, you've got to be near family. And I said, well, I am with family, you know, like, we got people down here who do a great job of raising kids, and, you know, so I know in that regard, we're in the right place with good people around to be able to do it. 'Cause I know I'm not going to be able to do it by myself. Like, I know that there's going to be times where I'm like, Cam, Renee, what the hell?
How do I change a diaper? No.
Like
that. And I had really good people around me too.
Yeah, totally. All I know is that, you know, it's exciting for me because it's a new space in which I can allow God to work through me, I think, and that's exciting to me as well. It's like it's another way I can allow God to.
What about you, Ephrat, who's not married? What do you think about, like, the thought of getting married? Do you have fears, or is that impacted you?
At the start of my dating with Mads, I was freaking out. I told Mads, like, you know, I can't not do what my dad did, type thing. Like, I still don't even know the full story, to be honest. But I just need to be there for my kids. But in the same sense, I also felt like God blessed me with the job that I'm in right now as well. In order for me to even see that perspective. So in a way, I've raised a lot of kids. I'm only 20. I'm only 22. It sounds weird to say. I've been in my industry for 3 years, but I've learned how to actually raise a person, you know.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, that's
it
one.
is.
And the other thing is, like what Jake was saying, and we were saying, there's so many good fathers in our church alone that I'm like, okay, or people that I know that will be great fathers, like you, Isaiah. You know, like I can see that you guys, you may not feel it, but 100% we know that you will be a good father. Like we can just see it.
Thanks, man.
But even that alone just gives me such good
Yeah.
encouragement. I'm like, even though it is still pretty daunting. Even marriage for me, like right now, is pretty daunting. We get that a lot. For those who aren't Christians, the thing is, ring before spring. So you meet someone and then you get married like within the next 6 months, you know. But Mads and I've been dating for 2 years now. So and a lot of people start, even when we were like 6 months in, they're like, when are you guys gonna get married?
Yeah.
It's like, well, not yet. Even right now, if you ask me, am I ready to get married yet? Honestly, no.
That's really mature, man. And not a
Right,
lot of
but like-
not a lot of people are willing to show that kind of restraint.
Yeah. Well, I'm not here just for sex, like
Well,
just straight up.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a lot
He
of the
was
time.
talking about that.
but
But a lot of the
Yeah.
time, it's like,
Yeah.
come on, guys, you've been dating for 4
Yeah.
months. You really can't keep
Get
it in your pants for a little bit longer.
yeah,
But I'm talking like people who are like, you're not even spiritually mature.
yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, it's like. But anyways, who am I? I did know a person who they didn't even date. They got flipping married.
Straight away.
Straight
Were
away.
they getting to know
Whoa.
them? But
Are
that
they still married?
what?
Still married.
Still married.
Is it healthy?
I don't know. Like, I'm not involved in their world to know, but they're still
Yeah.
married. and they
Church,
still go to
all
church.
that. That's crazy.
Wow.
Maybe have they? Did they know each other prior to getting married? Like,
Barely.
no, what? That is so random to me.
Yeah, I think he had the
They've
hots for
obviously-
her, and she was like, "Well, I'm not dating anyone without the intent to marry."
So on the,
So they got married.
So they
I'm
he
sorry, I
proposed.
find that so stupid in my opinion,
Wow.
but
At risk.
I do respect that. I
who
respect
knows?
it.
Maybe that was the.
Arranged marriages.
We got to bring
Yes.
this plane into land.
We gotta land.
and
Yeah.
finish off this episode. It's been fantastic to hear your heart and your thoughts. So I guess, are there any kind of closing thoughts on fatherlessness? Anything you want to add? Maybe anything that you would like to share with people to maybe help them? Yeah.
And fatherlessness in general. My head's in marriage space.
Well, it all ties together.
It does all tie together.
Whatever you'd like to say.
I would say, I think the key thing that I'm hearing from all three of us is that we've all got people in our life that we love and that we trust.
Yeah.
And I would say that's probably one of the most important things, is to put good people around you whose lives you admire and get into their world and be sponges and watch and soak it in, make friends with them, be in their home. That's very much what we do with you and Sarah. And I think that for me, that would have to have, other than obviously my relationship with God, would just 100% be key to strengthening yourself in all stages of life. Like even when Cameron and I were first dating, you know, I had good people that I was accountable to. I didn't just make that decision on my own. Like if all the people around me had red flags, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think one of the things with growing up fatherless is that we sometimes emotionally we do one of two things. We clam up and we just are non-committal, or we go in for the whole hog and we give our hearts too quickly.
Wow.
Totally.
That's a really big, either one of those two.
That's a big statement. That is a true statement too. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can be both at once. Like I didn't give my heart very easily, but when I did to Cameron, I'm like, marry me now.
Straight away, yeah.
Like I knew, I'm like, this is the right person. So having good people around you in all stages of life. I mean, we've talked about dating, we've talked about marriage, we've talked about parents.
Yeah.
I can tell you at each stage, the people that have been in my life that have helped me in those seasons.
Wow.
And even now, like I'm at the other end where my kids are growing up and I'm thinking ahead to my next season going, my next season is that they're going to get married and they're going to be like out of the house and we're going to be like empty nesters. I hate that word. But anyway, And
Well, you got your last one finishing school.
my last one just finished school. Totally.
Mm.
So that's our
Wow,
next
that's
season, and I want to
crazy.
do that season well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
And you know what? My parents didn't do that season well with me.
Mm.
Like, I was given a really hard time when I was the kid in this situation. So I don't want to do that to my kids. So I
that's
don't
so
want to
true.
keep them here in my home to control them because I'm going to be lonely when they go, right?
Mm.
I'm like, no, I love Cameron. Like, we went to the movies last night. We're like, the kid's not here. Let's go to the movies.
What did you watch?
We watched Dumb Money.
I
Dumb
don't even
Money.
know. I haven't
You've
even
got to
heard
go
of it.
see it.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Dumb money.
Yeah, about
Interesting.
about when the wall bets took over the wall what do you call it? Wall Street.
Oh,
The game plan when all okay.
that
I
sounds
can't
interesting.
explain it, but it's really interesting.
That sounds
It's out of
interesting.
my scope, honestly. I'm like, yeah.
I didn't even look these days. Who goes to the movies? There was like 5 people in the movie.
Yeah,
I
seriously.
love the movies.
But I do.
I love
used to go to
going.
the movies by myself before I started
Okay,
dating.
that's
Before I
a
started
whole
dating.
other thing.
That's weird.
I went and
Would
saw.
you go to the movies by yourself?
I went and saw
Never.
Eddie the Eagle by myself, and I cried in that
I
cinema.
love that.
That was such a flipping good movie.
If
But
I
it
went
was
by
awesome.
myself,
I
I'd
loved
feel
it.
like a reject.
I could
Well,
never.
you know,
I could never.
I went by myself and I loved it, but I was a reject.
No way.
So,
yeah, you're like, yeah.
No, I enjoyed
It's
it, but
good
now,
movie.
so you're right. You do have to have fun, and that's so inspiring to hear.
Mm.
You know that you and Cameron still enjoy each other's company.
Totally.
Your last has just finished school. They're about to move on with their life out into the great unknown.
Yeah.
And it's like
That's crazy.
it's not like you guys haven't had a relationship this whole time. It's like
Yeah.
you know they move on, but then that space is just filled with more of you guys.
Right, but even coming from a broken home, even that can even impact this. I mean, you see a lot of
Yeah.
people that get divorced in this stage. Well, you got someone
Totally.
in your life that's in that kind of situation,
Yeah.
and you know, so it's like, do you know what? This is what I always say. This is probably sounds terrible, but when your parents divorce, is the gift that keeps on giving. Like it, as in, it affects you every season of your life. So
every
I've
step.
even got this next season of my kids growing up. I'm thinking how not to allow, you know, growing up in a broken home to affect that season
For
Well,
sure.
and to do it well.
Well, you're paving the way, really. You know, you're
Yeah.
doing what was never modeled to you,
Yes.
and now you are becoming that model
Yeah.
for
for them.
thousands. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so
and I
true.
think even that is
Mm.
not generous enough of a number of people whose lives that you are reaching. No, honestly, and
I do
so
agree.
thank you for paving the way. Thank you for coming and taking responsibility for your life and showing everyone how possible it is to live an extraordinary life. I mean, your life typifies what it means to be extraordinary. You've with Cam have ran Youth Alive Australia and
Yeah.
you've done all these amazing things, but it's like I think your greatest achievement is the family that
do
you've
agree.
created. And
Thank
I've
you.
experienced your family. I love all your kids.
Yeah.
They're all amazing.
Besides that one.
So,
No.
yeah,
I
Liam.
which
love-
one? I know which one you're
Ashton.
talking
No,
about.
no, no.
No, they're all
Man.
amazing,
Yeah.
so respectful, so beautiful. They
Yeah,
all
for
love
sure.
Jesus. They are all creative,
Yeah.
but walk in their own lane. They're
So
not
hungry
stepping
too,
on
for
anything.
sure.
I mean, it's amazing. It's like it's really just incredible to see. So thank you for walking that
Yeah.
road. Thank you for paving the way, and
Yeah.
thank you for showing kids like us that it's possible to have
Yeah.
that type of life.
And you were
It
saying
is.
like spiritual parents. Honestly, I feel like you are spiritual parents to many of us, right?
Yeah,
So-
totally.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
pleasure, and to be able to do it differently and show the way is honestly the biggest honor ever. And I think maybe this is a little lasting nugget. I think sometimes when you come from a divorce home, there's actually a lot of good that can come out of it because it does make you very determined. I know what I do want. I know what I want my marriage to look like. I know what I want my family to look like. And it can make you a very, very strong, empathetic, not pathetic person. And so if you can lean into that side of it instead of the victim mentality side, and you guys are both navigating your seasons in life really well.
You're trying
And I
to,
love this
yes.
podcast. Please keep doing it.
We will.
Yes, we will.
Keep going.
I think
we're hungry.
there's obviously so many ways and different roads that this can go down. I think
100%.
our mission, you started out and it will always remain trying to do what we can to help restore
Yeah.
That
God's blueprint to the world. Because I live on this hill and I'll die on this hill.
Yeah.
that God created a certain way for a reason,
You did.
and it's not too late for us. It's
Yeah.
not too late for anyone.
And honestly, like just to build a sense of community, right? Like I feel when you don't have a parent or that abandonment starts kicking in, you really feel like you don't have anyone in your lives. Even if your mom is there, you still feel like there's no one there for you. And I think Jake and I are really, like we were saying from the start, we really would love to make a a community where we can help each other, like as easy as shaving, for example,
Yeah,
right?
get some,
Right? Yeah.
connect some dads with
Come
some
on.
young people.
Yeah.
Important.
But who
It's actually
knows?
one of the number one solutions
But-
is to find a place to belong.
Yeah. So
Well, there you go. Well, we found our place
we have
You
In this
belong
church. Yeah.
in the house of
in
the
the
Lord.
Milk
house of the
Run
Lord.
Yeah.
podcast.
No, that's right. So,
Come on.
well, thank you everybody for listening again. If you would like to listen to more of Renee's stuff on the
Yeah,
Girl
Girl
Next
Next
Door, where
Door.
can everyone find you?
Yes.
Yep, Girl Next Door podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and Instagram, girlnextdoor.podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, fantastic. Make sure that you do. Everything she has to say is amazing,
And vice
and on the
versa.
cutting edge of culture,
Oh, yes.
which I personally love.
I'm going to do digital identity.
Hey,
No, I already would have done it by the
is that
time
the
you
next-
guys
Oh,
see
so-
this.
well,
Digital ID.
we'll have to listen to that one.
Go back and
love
listen.
the
And where can my
episodes.
guys find you, my listeners?
Look, basically YouTube
Spotify.
and Instagram.
And
They're the
Instagram.
three places.
Yeah.
Just the Milk Run podcast.
Not
yes.
iTunes yet, but you
No,
are
we are
coming.
we are
We are
on the
coming,
way. We
yes.
got to sort out
Yes.
some little silly things, but
For-
as soon as they're
yeah.
sorted, we'll be on iTunes as well. But thank
Good
you
job.
everybody
Thank
for listening.
you.
We hope that this has blessed you in
Yes.
some way. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And just know that as we bring this episode to a close, I think the overarching sort of idea is that you have the ability to create the life you want today.
Come on now.
Yes, you do.
Come on.
Yes, you do. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
We'll get Renee back as well.
We do.
We will.
Anytime.
Maybe Renee and Cam. Oh, we can talk about this
That'd
later.
be hilarious.
Anyways,
We'll see you in the
sweet.
next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Mwah.